A Cosmology of Monsters book review by Xander Dufour, English 12. A Cosmology of Monsters is a foray into the unknown in more ways than one. Instead of the gory, visceral horror you might find in a lot of other books of its kind, Cosmology of Monsters uses psychological trauma and the family's deep-rooted history of mental health issues to create a narrative unlike your average horror novel. The other unknown is the author, Sean Hamill, for whom the book is a debut. For a debut book, it reads rather well. The language and suspense that is built up throughout the narrative is quite admirable and fits the category quite well. But I do find that the pacing is a bit off. It goes rather slowly. A decent chunk of the book, I would say around half, is spent mostly diving into the characters that make up the main cast, Noah's family. The book starts off with the inception of the family, Noah's parents, somewhat eccentric in their nature, meeting and their eventual courtship into marriage. It continues with a rather depressing act of deteriorating health, mental state, and deteriorating relationships of most, if not all, of the cast of characters. And finally, nearly halfway through the book, horror has arrived. The book carries less than lighthearted themes of dealing with grief, mental health issues, and the idea that demons inside us are just as scary as any Lovecraft-esque horror monsters. I'll try not to spoil too much about the second half of the book. However, the content of the book, even before the aspects of horror kick in, are definitely rather heavy. I was more than a little off-put. I think that for a lot of other people, that might be one of the main staples that attracted them to the book and made them like it. But for me, I didn't rather like it. The book focuses predominantly on mental health and physical trauma, including, but not limited to, depression, death of a family member, suicide, rape, child abuse, kidnapping, murder, gore, adultery, violence, and that's not really all of it. That's just some of the worst ones. It was more than a little off-putting, especially when, given how many hard topics the author decides to put it in, a lot of them aren't handled very well or are glossed over in some way or another. I do have praise for the book. I think it was well written. I think overall it is great for a debut book, and I will probably read more of Sean Hamill in his later books. But I don't think I would recommend this book to a lot of the people that I know, nor do I think it deserves as much praise as it's been getting. I think people are mistaking the classic, horror shock that you get when you find out the huge monster is a cosmic being, and you're, scared to your bones, for a more disgusted, shock that you get when you read this book. It's not completely awful. It's definitely readable. I'd give it a thumbs down, and I recommend that you read the classics of Lovecraft that this book mentions so often, rather than foray into this unknown. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it.